Sometimes in life, you think you done all your learning. You think heartache done passed you by. You get to a certain age, 52 in my case, and you say to yourself, I know better now. But baby, let me tell you, life will still find a way to teach you something new. My name's Loretta May, born and raised down in Jackson, Mississippi. Worked my whole life, raised 2 children on my own, paid every bill with these 2 hands right here. I wasn't rich, but I was proud. Proud of my little house, proud of my garden, proud of the woman I became after everything I've been through. So when I met Charles, I wasn't even looking for no man. I was content. But he came along like one of them late summer rains, soft, unexpected, and just what you think your heart needs. Charles was, well, he had that kind of charm that made you feel seen. You know what I mean? Like he'd look at you when you're talking, really look. He'd say, Miss Loretta, you got that kind of smile could make a man forget his troubles. And I'll admit it, I blushed like a schoolgirl every time. He was a few years younger than me, 47, worked at a car dealership out in Memphis. Said he'd been divorced for a while, just trying to get his life back together. We started talking after church one Sunday, and the talking turned into lunches, and the lunches turned into evenings on my porch, sipping sweet tea and laughing till the crickets came out. He was good company, good talker too, always had big plans, big dreams, said he wanted to build something real, a life, a future, maybe even a home. Now me, I had savings, not much, but enough. After all those years of working at the nursing home, I'd put away a little for my retirement. I wasn't flashy, never been one for gold or fancy cars. My joy came from simple things. So when Charles started talking about us getting a house together, something with a garden and a porch swing, I'll be honest, my heart opened right up. I thought maybe God was giving me a second chance. He said, Loretta, I got the know-how, you got the sense. Between us, we can build something good. And I believed him. For months, we dreamed together. He'd send me pictures of houses he saw online, and we'd sit on the phone late into the night talking about paint colors and furniture. He even took me to see one house, big windows, white fence, and a magnolia tree right out front. I remember standing in that yard thinking, this could be our home. And baby, I wish I could stop the story right there. I wish I could freeze that moment with the sun shining and my heart full. But life don't stop when it feels good. It keeps going, and sometimes it goes straight downhill. One day, he told me, Loretta, the bank won't approve my loan just yet. I need a little help with the down payment, just to get it started. Once I get the house, we'll move in together, and I'll pay you right back. Now, I ain't no fool. I've been burned before. But something about the way he said it, the way he made me feel safe, I let my guard down. I said, Charles, you sure this is a good idea? And he smiled, that soft smile of his, and said, Baby, this is for us. Those words right there, for us, that's what did it. I went to my bank, pulled out $25,000. That was most of my savings, but I thought, this is what love looks like when you trust somebody. He took that money, kissed me on my forehead, and said, You won't regret this, Loretta. You got my word. For a little while, things seemed fine. He'd call me every evening, talking about how the papers were moving, how the contractor was fixing this and that. I even started packing some boxes at my place, little things like dishes and photo frames. I was getting ready for our new life. But slowly, the phone calls started getting shorter, then fewer. Then he said he was busy. I started feeling that old ache in my stomach, that whisper that tells you something ain't right. One Saturday, I decided to drive out to that new house, just to surprise him. maybe take him lunch, see the progress. I remember pulling up on that gravel driveway, my heart beating fast. But when I looked at the porch, there was a woman standing there, young, maybe late 30s. She was watering the flowers, humming to herself, and next to her was an older lady in a rocking chair. At first, I thought maybe I had the wrong house, but then I saw Charles's car parked right there in the driveway. And baby, that's when my world started to tilt. I didn't go up. I just sat there in my car, staring. And then Charles came out that front door, laughing. He kissed that younger woman on the cheek, said something, and she laughed too. I remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even cry, not yet. I just sat there, watching the man I loved, standing on the porch of the house I helped buy, with another woman. And as I sat there, I realized something else. The older woman in the rocking chair, that was her mama. That house, my money, was now their home. And in that moment, everything went quiet inside me. The only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat, heavy and slow. I sat there in that car for a long time. I don't even remember how long. Might have been 10 minutes, might have been an hour. Time don't move right when your heart's breaking. Everything feels slow, like you're underwater trying to breathe. When I finally turned the key and started that old Buick up, I didn't cry yet. I just drove. Didn't even know where I was going. Just away from there, away from them. The road blurred in front of me, and the only thing I could hear was that voice in my head saying over and over, "You fool, Loretta, you fool." But when I pulled up in front of my house, the little brick one I'd worked so hard for, I sat there, looked at the porch light flickering, and that's when it hit me. That deep kind of crying that come from the bottom of your stomach, the kind you can't stop once it starts. I cried for every late night I stayed up talking to him. I cried for every dollar I pulled out of that account thinking I was building something real. And mostly, I cried for the woman I used to be before him, the one who was careful, steady, and proud of herself. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, thinking about everything that led me there. And that's what I'm going to tell you now, how we built those dreams together. Because you need to understand, I didn't just give him money. I gave him trust, and I gave him my belief. See, when you're my age, people think love's supposed to be over. They tell you to be happy by yourself, to just thank the Lord and keep knitting. But the truth is, the heart don't retire. It still gets lonely. It still hopes. And Charles, he saw that in me. He didn't rush me at first. He was patient, called every evening, asked about my day. He'd say, "Loretta, you've been taking care of everybody else your whole life. Ain't it time somebody take care of you?" And Lord help me, I wanted to believe him. It started simple. We'd go out for Catfish Fridays, go to church together on Sundays. My friends liked him, said he was polite, said he treated me right. He'd hold my hand in public, always smiling that easy smile. I remember thinking, this man's different. One night, we was sitting on my porch, summer breeze blowing, and he said, "You ever think about moving out the city? Somewhere quiet, somewhere just for us?" I laughed and said, "Charles, you sound like you trying to run away." He said, "Not run away, baby. Start fresh." And that's how the dream began. We started talking about building something together. He'd bring home real estate listings, talk about equity and investments, things I didn't understand much about, but he sounded so sure. Said he knew a realtor friend could help us get a deal. I told him, "Charles, I don't want no big fancy house. I just want something peaceful." And he said, "That's what I want too, Loretta. Just peace, me and you." I remember one Saturday, we went driving out past the city limits. He took me to this new subdivision, all new houses, fresh paint, the smell of sawdust in the air. He said, "This is where we gon' live, baby. You'll have your garden right there, and I'll put up a swing right under that tree." I could almost see it. I could see my grandbabies running through the yard, Sunday dinners on the porch, laughter filling the air. That's what love does, you know. It paints pictures in your mind, beautiful ones. But I should have looked closer. I should have asked more questions. He said he needed a down payment to secure the lot, but his credit was still tied up from his divorce. I told him I didn't want to mix money and love. I'd done that once before, long ago, and it ended bad. He said, "Loretta, I ain't asking for charity. I'm asking for partnership." That word right there, partnership, made me feel seen, like I wasn't just somebody's woman, but somebody's equal. So I helped him. First, it was small things, a few hundred here for paperwork fees, a few hundred there for inspection. He'd always bring me receipts, always act transparent, said he didn't want me to worry. Then came the big one, $25,000 for the down payment. I remember signing that check, hand trembling a little, but I told myself, this is faith. You can't build love without faith. He kissed me after and said, "You just wait, Loretta. We gon' walk through that front door together before summer's out." And I believed him. For a while, everything seemed to line up just like he said. He'd text me photos of tiles being laid, talk about paint samples. He even asked me what color I wanted the kitchen cabinets. I said, "White, Charles, clean and bright." He said, "White it is." It felt real. He even introduced me to one of his coworkers, told them I was his lady. I remember feeling proud, like I finally had something good. But right around that time, things started to shift, just a little at first. He'd say he was working late, he'd cancel plans. Sometimes I'd call and it'd go straight to voicemail. When I asked, he'd laugh it off, say, "Baby, I'm just tired. You know how these closing deals go." I wanted to believe him, because believing was easier than thinking I'd been fooled. Then one night, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. A perfume on his jacket, not mine. Sweet, strong, too young for a woman my age. When I asked, he chuckled. "You jealous, Loretta? That's just from the ladies at work." I told myself not to overthink it. I'd come too far to start doubting now. But that's the thing about intuition. It don't whisper for long. If you ignore it, it starts to scream. A few days later, I asked to see the house again. I said I wanted to take pictures, maybe bring my sister by. He said the place was a mess, told me the contractors were still fixing the wiring, that I shouldn't come yet. Something about the way he avoided my eyes when he said that, it stayed with me. That next Saturday, when I drove out there by myself, part of me already knew. And what I saw, that younger woman on my porch, watering flowers I didn't plant, it was like watching a movie I couldn't pause. Now, sitting here, looking back, I realize how carefully he played it, how he studied my heart, learned my soft spots. See, women like me, we love deep and we love hard. We believe in taking care of people. And men like Charles, they know that. They know how to talk sweet, how to make promises sound like poetry. But I ain't telling this story for pity, no ma'am. I'm telling it because somebody else out there might be sitting where I was, believing somebody's words more than their actions. Let me tell you something, baby. When somebody really loves you, you don't have to chase clarity. You don't have to wonder, guess, or feel uneasy in your spirit.
Real love feels safe, not confusing. That night, after I saw him with her, I sat in my kitchen all night long. I went through my bank statements, my text messages, every "I love you," every "trust me." And by the time the sun came up, I wasn't just heartbroken, I was mad. Not just at him, at myself, for forgetting who I was. Because Loretta may be kind, but she ain't weak. So I made up my mind. I was going to find out everything, whose name that house was in, where my money went, and what exactly he thought he could get away with. And baby, when a woman like me decides to find the truth, she gonna find it.
You ever reach a point where the hurt turns quiet? Not gone, just quiet, like the ocean after a storm. That's where I was. The morning after I found out, I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't pacing or talking to myself. I was calm. Too calm, maybe. I made my coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and I said out loud, "Loretta May, you gon' handle this with grace." See, I wasn't raised to cause no scene. My mama used to say, when somebody wrongs you, don't holler, stand tall, and let the truth do the talking. So that's what I decided to do. I put on my best church dress, navy blue with little white flowers, the one that makes me feel strong. Tied up my headscarf, grabbed my purse, and I drove right back to that house. This time, I wasn't coming to surprise nobody. I was coming for answers. When I pulled up, the morning sun was bright. The house looked peaceful, too peaceful. There were wind chimes on the porch, swaying soft in the breeze. My stomach turned, but I kept my chin high. I walked right up to the front door and knocked. The young woman, the same one I'd seen watering flowers, opened the door. She looked surprised, said, "Can I help you, ma'am?" I looked her right in the eye and said, "Yes, baby, you can. Is Charles here?" Her face shifted, confusion mixed with something else. She called back inside, "Charles, there's a lady here to see you." I could hear him before I saw him, that familiar voice I used to wait for every night. Then he stepped out, froze for a second, and said, "Loretta." Just like that, no shame, no guilt, just my name, hanging in the air like he didn't expect me to have the nerve to show up. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because smiling kept me steady. I said, "Morning, Charles. Beautiful home you got here." He looked nervous then, started rubbing the back of his neck, glancing between me and the young woman. He said, "Loretta, this ain't what it looks like." And I said, "Well, I sure hope not, because what it looks like is I'm standing outside the house my money paid for, and you living in it with somebody else." The young woman frowned, said, "What's she talking about?" Charles stammered, "Baby, just go inside for a minute." But she didn't move. She crossed her arms, eyes darting between us. I could tell she wanted the truth, too. So I said, plain and calm, "Sweetheart, you might not know me, but I've been seeing this man for over a year. We planned this house together. Every wall, every dollar, every promise, I was part of it." Her jaw dropped. She turned to him, said, "Is that true?" He tried to talk, but his mouth couldn't form no words. That's how liars get caught, not by yelling, but by silence. I said, "Don't strain yourself, Charles. I already know the papers ain't got my name on 'em. I checked with the county this morning." And baby, the way his face changed, like the ground just opened under him, that's when I knew I had all the power I needed. See, before I came, I'd stopped by the county office, asked a few polite questions, paid a small fee, and pulled the property records. The deed was in his name, and hers, not mine, not even a mention.
The house I dreamed about was already theirs. So I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I want my money back, Charles." He blinked like he couldn't believe I said it out loud. Then he said, "Loretta, you know I ain't got it right now, but I'll fix it. I'll make it right." I said, "You already fixed it, just not for me." The young woman, his wife, as I later learned, turned to him and said, "Charles, you told me you used your savings. You said you've been saving up for years." He started to reach for her, but she stepped back. She looked at me, eyes wide, and said softly, "You gave him money?" I nodded. 25,000, my savings, my trust. Her face went pale. She didn't say another word. She just turned and walked inside. And there he was, standing in that doorway, the man who once said he loved me, now caught between the lies he built on lies and the truth standing right in front of him. I said, "You know, Charles, when you asked me for help, I thought we were building something honest. But you weren't building a home. You were building a cover, and now it's fallen apart." He started to talk again, but I cut him off. I don't want no excuses. You took what I worked my whole life for and gave it to another woman, and you gon' have to live with that. Then I stepped back, straightened my dress, and said, "But don't you worry. I may be old, but I ain't weak. You'll be hearing from me." I turned and walked away. Didn't look back, didn't run, just walked slow and steady like my mama taught me. When I got in my car, I didn't cry, not one tear, because crying time was over. Now it was time for action. That evening, I called my nephew. He's a lawyer out in Atlanta. Told him everything. He said, "Auntie, you might not get it all back, but we gon' make sure he don't sleep easy." And baby, that's exactly what we did. We filed a civil claim, fraud and unjust enrichment. Took some months, a lot of paperwork, but I was patient. The same patience that made me fall for Charles now became my weapon. He tried to fight it, tried to play dumb, but once the bank statements and messages came out, every "thank you for trusting me," every "we're building this together," it was over. The judge saw right through him. He had to pay me back, not all at once, but in payments, every month, like a reminder of what he did. And each time that check came in, I'd smile a little. Not because of the money, but because I'd turned my pain into proof that you can't steal a woman's dignity and walk away untouched. But even then, the money wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was learning to forgive myself. I'd wake up some mornings and still hear his voice in my head. I'd still see that porch, those flowers. And I'd remind myself, that house ain't mine, but that peace, that's mine again. A few weeks later, I drove by that house one last time. Not to confront him, just to close the chapter. The flowers were dead, the curtains were drawn, the wind chimes gone. I heard from a friend later that his marriage didn't last long after that. Lies don't build strong walls, you see. They crumble easy. And standing there on that quiet street, I whispered to myself, "Thank you, Lord. Thank you for showing me the truth before it was too late." When I got back home, I made myself a plate of collard greens and cornbread, turned on my gospel radio, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. Because sometimes losing what you thought was love is how you find yourself again. And that's exactly what part 4 is about. The reckoning, the part where I stopped being the woman who got played and became the woman who took her power back. Because, baby, when a woman like me learns her worth, the world better watch out.
Betrayal, that's a heavy word. People think it means just being lied to or cheated on, but it's deeper than that. Betrayal is when somebody takes the part of you that still believes in goodness and uses it against you. And that's exactly what Charles did. After all the court mess and paperwork, after all them checks started coming in, people would ask me, "Loretta, you feel better now?" And I'd smile and say, "I feel stronger." But baby, let me tell you something. Strength don't mean you don't hurt. It just means you learn to carry it better. There were nights I'd lie in bed and replay everything. The laughter, the porch talks, the way he'd hold my hand and say, "We got forever, baby." And I'd think, how can somebody look you dead in the eye and promise forever when they already halfway out the door? That's when I realized some people don't lie because they need to. They lie because it's easy for them. Charles was one of them folks who loved the idea of love, but not the work that comes with it. He loved being admired, being cared for, being believed in, but he never wanted to earn that kind of love. See, real love, it's not just about holding hands when things are good. It's about holding on when things get messy. And when things got real, Charles disappeared behind excuses and silence. That's betrayal. Not the kind that breaks your heart once, but the kind that makes you question your own reflection. I remember one Sunday morning, months after everything, I sat in church. Pastor was preaching about forgiveness, said, "You can't heal while holding hate in your heart." I wanted to shout, "But Pastor, what about justice? What about when somebody used your kindness like a doormat?" But I kept quiet. I just sat there holding my Bible tight. And as the choir started singing "His Eye is on the Sparrow," I closed my eyes and I felt something, peace trying to find its way back in. That's when it hit me. I didn't need to forgive Charles for him. I needed to forgive him for me. Because every time I thought of him with bitterness, I gave him more power. And Lord knows he had taken enough from me already. So I made a choice. Not a loud one, not a dramatic one, just a quiet promise to myself. Loretta May, you gon' stop carrying what he did. That night, I went through my phone, deleted every picture, every message, every memory that had his name attached. And when I was done, I whispered, "Goodbye." I thought that was it. I thought I was free. But betrayal don't always end when the person's gone. Sometimes it lingers in the little ways. Like when you meet a kind man and you flinch because you remember what trust cost you last time. Or when you look at your bank account and think about what it used to hold, not in dollars, but in dreams. That's when I learned that healing ain't a straight road. It's a winding one, full of potholes and pauses. There were days I'd feel strong, like I could tell my story and smile through it. Then there were days I'd hear a song we used to listen to, and my eyes would fill up all over again. But each time that pain came back, it hurt a little less, because every time it tried to pull me under, I'd remind myself, you survived it once, you can survive it again. One evening, about 6 months after the court case ended, I ran into Charles at the grocery store. I was in the produce aisle, picking out some peaches, and there he was, standing by the apples, looking smaller somehow. Not just older, but empty. He saw me before I saw him. He froze for a moment, then tried to smile. Said, "Loretta, how you been?" I looked at him, really looked. The man who once made me feel like I was the only woman in the room now looked like just another stranger. I said, "I've been blessed." He nodded, eyes darting away like he couldn't handle the weight of my calm. He said, "I never meant to hurt you." And I said, "You didn't mean not to." He didn't say nothing after that, just stood there shifting his weight like a man who finally ran out of lies. I picked up my peaches,
looked him square in the eye, and said, "You take care now, Charles." Then I turned and walked away. When I got to my car, I sat there for a second, not crying, not angry, just grateful. Grateful that the sight of him no longer shook my spirit. That's when I was really healing. See, betrayal tries to make you bitter. It whispers that nobody's worth trusting, that every smile's a setup, every promise a trap. But that's the devil talking. Because if you let betrayal close your heart, you let the wrong person win twice. And I wasn't about to let that man win again. So I started doing little things that made me alive again. I planted tomatoes in my backyard. I joined the church choir, something I hadn't done in 20 years. I even started teaching Bible study for young women, telling them about discernment, about paying attention to the spirit behind people's words. One of the girls, sweet thing, barely 23, asked me one night, "Miss Loretta, how do you know when somebody really loves you?" I smiled and said, "Baby, love don't make you doubt yourself. If you spending more time worrying than smiling, that ain't love, that's warning." The room was quiet after that, because we all knew what it felt like to ignore a warning. And that's what betrayal teaches you, not to be hard, but to be wise, to listen when your spirit says something ain't right. I stopped asking why he did it. Some questions don't need answers, they need closure. And closure don't come from the person who hurt you. It comes from you deciding that their chapter in your book is over. Now, when I tell my story, I tell it with pride, not shame, because there's power in surviving something that was meant to break you. And maybe, just maybe, Charles didn't come into my life to stay. Maybe he came so I could learn that even when people use your love wrong, you can still love yourself right. That's what betrayal can't take, your spirit. So if you listening to me right now, baby, and somebody done betrayed you, remember this. Don't chase after explanations. Don't beg for closure. Stand tall, fix your crown, and say, "Thank you for the lesson." Because one day, you'll look back, just like I did, sitting on your porch, sipping your coffee, and you'll realize the betrayal didn't end ya. It refined ya. And that leads us right into what came next for me, the reckoning. Not revenge. No, I wasn't out to hurt nobody, but I was ready to live bold again, to take back my power, my voice, my joy. Because when a woman like me gets her peace back, that's the most beautiful kind of reckoning there is.
Reckoning. That's what you call it when you stop running from the pain and start walking through it. See, after the betrayal, after the hurt, I thought the worst was over. But what I didn't know yet was that healing don't come just from time. It comes from truth. And baby, truth ain't always gentle. Sometimes it walks right up to your front door and asks, "Now what you gonna do with what you learned?" That's what happened to me. A few months after I ran into Charles at that grocery store, life started to feel quiet again. Not empty, just still. My days slowed down. I'd wake up, make my coffee, sit by the window, and just breathe. And in that silence, I started to hear myself again. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting on no phone call, no text, no "good morning, beautiful." I was just being Loretta. And that's when I realized something important. All my life, I'd been somebody's something. Somebody's daughter, somebody's mama, somebody's woman. But now, I was finally just me. It was scary at first. That quiet can be loud when you're not used to it. But slowly, it started to feel like peace. I began doing things I'd put off for years. I joined a local women's group. We met on Thursdays at the community center just to talk, share stories, and support each other. Most of us had lived enough life to write 3 books each. They called me Miss Loretta with the porch wisdom, and I liked that.
I told them parts of my story, not all the details, but enough. Enough for the younger ones to see what self-respect looks like after it's been tested. One evening after our meeting, a woman came up to me, young, maybe in her 30s, eyes red like she'd been crying. She said, "Miss Loretta, I'm going through something kind of like what you said. My man took everything I had and left me with nothing. I don't even know where to start." I looked her in the eye and said, "Baby, you start right here by saying his name without pain." She frowned a little. "How do I do that?" she asked. I said, "You practice. You keep living. Every morning you wake up, you call your own name louder than his." That's what I'd been doing, even when I didn't realize it, calling myself back home. See, the reckoning ain't about punishing the person who hurt you. It's about reclaiming the pieces of yourself you gave away. For me, that meant letting go of guilt. For a long time, I blamed myself, thought maybe I was too trusting, too soft, too hopeful. But one day, I stood in front of my mirror and said, "Loretta May, being kind ain't a weakness. It's a gift. Don't let nobody make you ashamed of it." And just like that, a weight lifted. I started to laugh again, real laughter from deep down. I'd sit on my porch with my neighbors, telling stories, sipping sweet tea. We'd talk about old times, gossip about who was wearing what to church, and for the first time in a long time, I felt joy that didn't depend on nobody else. One afternoon, my nephew, the lawyer who helped me, came by. He said, "Auntie, you ever think about writing a book? Folks need to hear what you've been through." I laughed and said, "Who gon' read the story of an old lady's broken heart?" He said, "Everybody who ever had one." That stuck with me. So I started writing, just a few pages at first, letters to myself, things I wished I'd known when I was younger. I wrote about love, loss, patience, pride, and yes, betrayal. But more than that, I wrote about coming back from it. I called it The House My Heart Built. And baby, those words poured out like rain after a dry summer. It wasn't about Charles anymore. It was about me, about how a woman can lose what she thought was everything and still rise up better than before. Some nights I'd sit under that old porch light with a pen in hand, the cicada singing in the dark, and I'd whisper, "You didn't break me, Charles. You built me stronger." That's what a reckoning feels like. Not revenge, not hate, but peace so solid you can stand on it. You know, sometimes I think about that house he bought, the one I helped pay for. And instead of pain, I feel gratitude. Because if it wasn't for that house, I'd still be living in a smaller version of myself, thinking I had to shrink to be loved. But that house, that lie, that heartbreak, it cracked me open just enough for the light to get in. And when the light got in, I found me again. One day, the women from our group asked me to speak at a local event. Voices of Women, they called it. I was nervous, but I said yes. When it was my turn, I stood on that little stage in my Sunday best, heart pounding. I looked out at all those faces, young, old, tired, hopeful, and I told them my story. I told them about Charles, about the money, about the heartbreak, about the court. But mostly, I told them about forgiveness, about the freedom that comes when you stop being angry and start being alive again. And when I finished, they stood up, clapping, crying, smiling. That's when I realized my story wasn't just mine. It belonged to every woman who ever gave her best and got betrayed. That was my reckoning, turning pain into purpose. After that, life kept getting sweeter in small ways. I started traveling a bit, went to visit my sister in Houston, spent a week by the ocean. I'd walk along the water, feeling the waves touch my feet, thinking, this is what freedom feels like. I even met someone new. Not in the romantic way, at least not yet. Just a kind man from church named Henry. He's a widower, quiet, gentle. We go walking sometimes after service, talk about everything from old music to favorite recipes. He don't rush me. He don't promise forever. He just shows up, steady and kind. And that's enough for now. Because the reckoning taught me this. Love don't have to hurt to be real. It don't have to take to prove it's given. And if somebody can't meet you where peace lives, then you let them walk on without you. Some folks think revenge is the reckoning, but baby, revenge is just another chain. The real reckoning is choosing yourself every single day without apology. Now, when I sit on my porch at sunset, I smile at the way the light hits my roses. They growing again, full and strong. I think they learned from me. I still keep a picture of that house tucked away in a drawer, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of growth. Proof that even when people try to take something from you, they can't take what's yours by spirit. Because what's yours, truly yours, always finds its way back home. So here I am, still standing, still Loretta, not the one who got played, but the one who turned her heartbreak into a testimony. And that, my friend, is what a reckoning looks like.
You know, baby, life has a funny way of circling back to peace. It don't come fast, and it sure don't come easy. But if you keep breathing, keep walking, keep trusting that the pain won't last forever, one day you wake up and realize the storm done passed. That's where I am now. Peace. Not because everything worked out like I wanted, but because I learned how to let go of what was never meant for me. See, healing ain't something that just happens to you. It's something you choose over and over again. Every morning I wake up, I thank the Lord for another chance to start fresh. And every night I lay my head down and forgive something new. Sometimes myself, sometimes the past, sometimes the people who didn't know how to love me right. That's the real work of healing. After all the reckoning, the rebuilding, the tears, and the truth, what's left is you, just you. And you have to learn how to love that person again. For a while, I didn't know how. I'd sit on my porch, watching the world move around me, thinking, who am I without the pain? Because when you carry hurt for so long, it starts to feel like home. But one day, I decided to make a new kind of home. Not the kind with walls and a roof, but the kind that lives inside your spirit. A home made of peace, faith, and quiet joy. And baby, that home can't be bought with money, and it sure can't be taken away by nobody. You remember that man I told you about, Henry? Well, he kept showing up. Always gentle, always kind. One Sunday after service, we were walking to our cars, and he said, "Miss Loretta, you ever think maybe God let you go through all that not to break you, but to prepare you?" I smiled and said, "Prepare me for what?" And he said, "For the kind of love that's honest." That hit me deep. Because I realized then that all that hurt I went through, it didn't destroy my ability to love. It refined it. It made me slower to trust words, but quicker to notice actions. It made me softer with myself and firmer with my boundaries. That's the lesson I learned. Pain don't have to make you better. It can make you better. When I look back now, I don't see a foolish woman. I see a brave one, a woman who loved fully, who gave honestly, who got betrayed but didn't lose her faith. If I could talk to that younger version of myself, the one standing in the bank signing that check with trembling hands,
I'd tell her, "Baby, you gon' cry, but you gon' survive. And when you do, you gon' shine brighter than ever." Because that's what healing looks like. Not pretending it didn't happen, but knowing it can't control you anymore. Every scar tells a story. And this one, mine says she learned. These days, I wake up with peace in my chest. I tend to my little garden, those tomatoes, my collard greens, and the roses that just won't quit blooming. Sometimes I sit out there at dusk with a cup of tea and my old gospel station humming low, and I just whisper, "Thank you. Thank you for what left. Thank you for what stayed. Thank you for what's still coming." I think that's the greatest healing of all, gratitude. Because once you start thanking life for even the hard stuff, it all starts to make sense. You know, I used to think the worst thing Charles ever did was take my money. But now I see that what he really took was my illusion. The idea that love had to look a certain way to be real. And when that illusion broke, I saw the truth. Love don't live in promises or pretty words. It lives in peace. Now, when I talk to my girls at the community center, I tell them, don't fall in love with potential, fall in love with peace. Because potential can fool you, peace never does. I tell them to listen when their spirit speaks. That little whisper inside you that says something ain't right, that's not fear, that's wisdom. And wisdom comes from walking through fire and realizing it didn't burn you up, it purified you. That's what my healing became, a purification. One night, sitting by my window, I took out my old journal, the one I wrote in during all those hard nights. Pages full of tears, confusion, prayers. I read through every one of them. Some pages were stained with coffee, some with tears. And at the end, I added a new line. I survived, I grew, I forgave. Then I closed that book, put it away, and opened a new one. This time, I wrote on the first page, "New beginnings don't need old pain." That was my final letting go. Sometimes I still get letters or messages from people who've heard my story. They say things like, "Miss Loretta, your story gave me courage to leave," or "You helped me see my worth again." And every time I read one of those, I cry, not from sadness, but from pride, because that means the pain wasn't wasted. It became purpose. That's the most beautiful part of healing, realizing your story might be the medicine somebody else needs. If my voice, my journey, my tears, if any of that helps another woman choose herself sooner, then I've done what I was meant to do. I don't hate Charles. I don't wish him bad. I wish him understanding, the kind that comes too late. Because forgiveness ain't saying it's okay. It's saying you can't hold me anymore. And he don't, not one bit. Now, let me tell you the biggest lesson I learned, the one I carry like scripture. Sometimes God will let you lose something you wanted to give you something you needed. I wanted that house. I wanted that man. But what I needed was to find myself again. And I did. I may not have a mansion, but I got peace. I may not have that man, but I got love, the kind that comes from within. And I may not have all the answers, but I got faith that whatever comes next, I can handle it. Because I've been through the fire, and I came out gold. When the sun sets over my little porch and that golden light hits my face, I close my eyes and whisper, "Thank you, Lord, for letting me live long enough to learn." Then I smile. That same smile Charles once said could make a man forget his troubles, and I realized he was right about one thing. It does make a man forget his troubles. It made mine. So, if you listening right now, if you've been hurt, used, or betrayed, I want you to hear this from me, from Loretta May, a woman who's been there and made it through. You can start over at any age. You can rebuild from nothing. You can forgive without forgetting. And you can love again, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Let your heart be soft, but let your mind be wise. And remember, when someone buys a house with your money, don't worry. God's already building you a home made of peace. That's my lesson. That's my healing.